Hello, Governor. Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. With apologies to my English viewers, I couldn't resist doing the accent. I've really been enjoying Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and we recently went to London, so I thought, well, just like my previous Boston video, where I took my hoodie around the different spots that appeared in Assassin's Creed 3, why don't I dress up and do all the spots in London that are in Assassin's Creed Syndicate? So that's what I'm doing. We decided to start off this video outside the Palace of Westminster, also known as the Houses of Parliament. I got Jacob Fry here outside, and you can see Big Ben in the distance. I've had him go up to the top of that, and I can tell you that's a pretty high tower. Taking Jacob around various parts of London in the game is a lot of fun. Now, he has the benefit of a little gauntlet batarang thing that allows him to climb up to the top of the rooftops. In my Boston video, I tried replicating how Connor would climb and scale the sides of buildings, but that's a little bit harder to do in London, and so I'm just going to let Jacob take us to the top, and I'll stand in his footsteps. And let's try out a few more locations in London. Not far from the Palace of Westminster is Westminster Abbey, one of the oldest churches in England. Construction began in 1042, back when it was St. Peter's Abbey, and the building has increased in size and importance so that it is now used by the monarchy for funerals and coronations. In the 1500s, the Church of England decided to change its status. It is now a royal peculiar, a church directly responsible to the sovereign, and it is not considered either an abbey nor a cathedral. There is Westminster Cathedral a few blocks away, a different building. Another well-known London landmark is Trafalgar Square, with Nelson's column in the center. The battle took place in 1805, well before Assassin's Creed, which takes place in 1868, and all of this area was built in the 1840s, so at the time of Assassin's Creed, it was only about 20 years ago that all of this had been constructed. I often joked with people when I said I was going to do this video that when I get to Trafalgar Square, I'm going to obviously climb to the top of Nelson's column, just like in the game. But the foundation for that column is actually not easy to get up on top of. You can see some kids are up there, but there's no staircase or anything, and with me with my boots and my jacket and my hat, I found it a little bit tricky, so I opted not to climb Nelson's column. And just before we leave Trafalgar Square, I wanted to take Jacob Fry over in this direction because this is where my wife was standing filming me, and she was outside a red shop, and there were people in that shop looking at me strangely in my top hat and leather coat. As you can see in the game, this Wooge and Sons store seems to be the exact same place in the game. Not far from Trafalgar Square is Leicester Square, named after the 2nd Earl of Leicester. Originally, in about the 17th century, this was a very fancy part of town, and people like the Prince of Wales lived here, but by the time of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, it had gone a little down market and was the home of various theaters, but the park was still there. Now, if you go there in the modern era, as I have, you'll see it's quite different. There's now this new statue of William Shakespeare standing where that water fountain used to be. Not long after the time of Assassin's Creed Syndicate in the 1870s, the park was sold and renovated yet again, and that's when the William Shakespeare statue was put in place. Just down the road is Piccadilly Circus, which has nothing to do with a circus. That's actually based on the Latin word for circle, and if you look, there's a roundabout circular area that this intersection contains. The intersection joins Regent Street with Piccadilly, and that road is actually named after these Piccadilly frilly collars that I think were popular in the 16th or 17th century. So that's where the name Piccadilly Circus comes from. Piccadilly Circus today looks vastly different, what with the crowds and the giant electronic billboards, but if you look on the far left of the screen, you'll also see a big statue which is not there in Assassin's Creed. That was actually the Shaftesbury Memorial Fountain, which was built in 1892, after the time of Assassin's Creed. The statue on top is thought by some to be Eros or Cupid, but apparently that is not the case. The sculptor, Alfred Gilbert, had actually decided to make a statue not of Eros, but his brother Anteros. I guess he preferred that character in mythology and decided to make that the character that we see on top of the fountain. This is Victoria train station, which in the time of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, as well as today, it was the second busiest train station in all of London. The first most busy station we'll get to later on in this video. But this is where many trains would arrive and coaches and carriages could be hired. It was an extremely busy place. It was originally going to be called Grosvenor Terminus, but it was decided since it's on Victoria Street, they should probably name it after Queen Victoria. In the modern era, you can see that the station really hasn't changed too much. You can make out much of the original structure, and I can assure you, having stood where Jacob Fry stood, it's just as busy today as it was in the old days. Now, as you can see, I made it to the Tower of London, and I was planning to do that for this video, but unfortunately in Assassin's Creed you can only actually do those missions as Evie Fry, so me being there with my top hat didn't make much sense. Same with standing in front of Tower Bridge. That also didn't make much sense to do it in a top hat, but I did it anyway. This fancy building is Covent Garden, which in the time of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, as well as today, is a very trendy shopping area in the West End. Apparently in the year 1201, the area had been walled off by Westminster Abbey and was actually used as arable land and orchards. And it actually got the nickname as being referred to as the Garden of the Abbey and the Convent. And later that just became the Covent Garden. Here's an interesting thing I discovered when I was standing getting this shot. Behind my wife, there were some street performers, and I noticed on the wall a sign that said, "In this spot, the original Punch and Judy show was first performed." So this area has a bit of a history for street performers. Now, on the subject of Punch and Judy and comedy and satire, this next sequence actually ended up being a bit of a farce, but I thought I'd leave it in anyway because it's good for a chuckle. I was going to talk about Horse Guards, which is right near number 10 Downing Street, was the headquarters of two major army commands and has some interesting history. But unfortunately, in the game in Assassin's Creed, as I was standing there with Jacob Fry, it ended up being a bit of a traffic jam. All of these horses kept going past and stopping and blocking my view. You can kind of make out the two guards in those little archways, but then more and more traffic got in front of me. And that's kind of ironic because in real life Horse Guards, I ran into the same problem. Way too much traffic, as you can see, is just too many things blocking our view. So what the heck, I thought I'd include it anyway. On a more serious note, this is the Royal Exchange, which was originally built as a very, very complex market in London. And I was thinking it was obviously some kind of stock exchange, but apparently in its original inception, stockbrokers were not allowed in the Royal Exchange because they were considered rude types of patrons. It was only for the exchange of goods. The statue out front is actually Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington. Now, when we were going, I was expecting it to be full of all kinds of bankers and important people, but we did it on a Saturday, and unfortunately the place was closed, probably just for the best, because me walking around in a top hat might have had some odd looks from some of those bankers. And on an even more serious note, not too far from the Royal Exchange, is the monument to the Great Fire of London. This column is huge, and it commemorates that in September of 1666, the fire that ripped through London destroyed something like 70,000 homes of the 80,000 residents of the City of London. So it was quite a disaster, that fire. Here I am at the monument, and it's erected approximately 200 feet from the original spot where the fire started in Pudding Lane back in September the 2nd, 1666. You can actually go up inside the monument and walk around the very top of it, but I didn't get a chance to. Well, let's cheer ourselves up by talking about Old Spitalfields Market. Here it is in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. It was apparently on the grounds of Spitalfields, which was a rural area on the outskirts of London in the 17th century. But by the 19th century, which Assassin's Creed Syndicate takes place in, it was quite a thriving marketplace. And it's still a thriving marketplace today. In fact, there's a lot of construction going on. I couldn't quite line up exactly Old Spitalfields as it appears in the game versus how it appears today, but I did find these archways and this sign that show that I did at least get to Old Spitalfields Market. As hinted at earlier, this is the busiest train station in all of London. This is Waterloo Station. Now, Jacob Fry is standing in a kind of an unusual spot here. If I was to walk him around inside the station in the game, you would see the incredible glass ceiling that Waterloo Station had in the game and also today. But unfortunately, because today there are giant billboards and signs showing when different trains are departing, I couldn't actually get any shot that looked any decent, so I managed to just place myself wherever I could get a shot that showed a little bit of the ceiling, and I stuck Jacob Fry in the same spot. So I guess it's true what they say about Waterloo. I couldn't escape if I wanted to. And as we draw to a close on this video, I'm showing off St. Paul's Cathedral, and there's a couple of reasons why. At the beginning of the video, when Jacob Fry scaled up the side of the building and I was there in his footsteps on the rooftop, you could see a dome off in the distance. That was St. Paul's Cathedral. Inside this church is a dedication to Paul the Apostle, which apparently dates back to the original church that stood on this site, and that was back in 604 AD. The building is huge. It's 360 feet high, which up until 1962 made it the tallest building in all of London. So when Jacob Fry climbs up and stands on the top of that dome, he's getting the best possible view he could for the time that he lived in. Several people that we've spoken about in this video have got a connection to St. Paul's Cathedral. Lord Nelson was buried here, as well as the Duke of Wellington. And again, to connect it to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the Jubilee celebration for Queen Victoria took place in St. Paul's. To bring it into the more modern era, Prince Charles and Lady Diana were married in St. Paul's, and Queen Elizabeth II celebrated her 80th birthday here as well. And finally, Jacob Fry is standing outside Buckingham Palace. Now, the front of the palace looks a little different in Assassin's Creed than the way it looks today. One major reason is the Victoria Memorial is not out front. That's that large white statue with Queen Victoria commemorated there. That didn't get designed until 1901 and not constructed along with the gardens until later. Sir Aston Webb was the architect who did all of that work, and he also refaced the front of Buckingham Palace as part of that work. And you can see here what I mean. The front of Buckingham Palace looks very different in the modern era compared to that last shot. Some things haven't changed though. There's still lots of people milling about in front of the palace. A little bit more in the modern era than when Jacob Fry was standing in my spot. But all of this will make me appreciate much better all of the work that Ubisoft put into Assassin's Creed Syndicate when I go into Buckingham Palace in the game, when I encounter Queen Victoria. I'm really looking forward to a lot of that. I have to say I've had a heck of a lot of fun wandering around London and recreating these scenes. I hope you've enjoyed coming along for the ride. Until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.